Hi students, this week we'll be studying two of the most important and influential musicians in jazz history, Miles Davis and John Coltrane. These two musicians were so influential, they set the stage for jazz music for the 50 years since the 1950s. Now, Miles Davis was responsible for many jazz movements. He was always looking to create something new, and John Coltrane totally expanded what it meant to be a jazz soloist and a jazz improviser. There's a lot of stuff on this week's module regarding these two giants of jazz, but what you're going to be reading about is a lot of terms and ideas of modality. In fact, chapter 14 is pretty much all Miles Davis and John Coltrane, but it's titled modality. You're going to be reading a lot about that term. What do you mean by modal? What do you mean by modality? This is basically what it is. For years and years, ever since jazz was born, jazz improvisers relied on chords. Whatever the chords were, whether they were basic blues chords, even the bebop chords. Always chords you had to improvise on. Well, Miles Davis, with his Kind of Blue album, threw that idea out of the window with an introduction of something called a modal concept. The idea that you no longer improvise with chords. There is no set chords. It gives you freedom to do even more and express yourself more. So what are modal scales? Well, throughout music history, we have either been dealing with major tonality or minor tonality. As such, there are major scales and there are minor scales. And for almost all of music history, going back to Johann Sebastian Bach, that's how music was composed, whether it was classical music, jazz music, or pop music. What Miles did is he threw all of that out the window. Said no more tonality, no more chords. We aren't going to rely on anything major, anything minor. Instead, we're going to work with modal scales. So what's a modal scale? Well, there are other scales that exist besides the major and the minor. For instance, this is a Dorian mode. Here's a Phrygian mode. Here's a Lydian mode. Here's a Mixolydian mode. These are all different kinds of scales that have never really been used in any kind of music before. Miles Davis decided to explore improvising on this. So when you read your chapter on modality and you listen to most of these Coltrane and Miles Davis recordings, they're going to be talking about how they're improvising in a modal sense. So on a lot of these things, like John Coltrane's My Favorite Things, or Miles Davis's So What Miles Davis does with So What is there's no really sense of chords, but he improvises on a D Dorian mode. That's it. And the bridge goes to an E flat Dorian mode. Back to the D Dorian. So there's no chords. Now the pianist is playing chords, but the pianist is playing any chord at any time that is going to fit within the modal scale. So as you listen to these recordings, the music will sound very new, very different to you, but that's what Coltrane and Miles Davis are going for. There's a lot of assignments this week, but it's a lot of listening and a lot of great listening. I know you'll enjoy it.